what's up guys? Welcome back to Astrological Racing. Today, we're going to be talking about haptics. Again, I know I can't really get enough of them just because a lot of us, we can't afford motion yet or don't really have access to try it anywhere yet. So I truly believe that the next best thing that you could possibly get to motion is really bringing this experience to life, where whether you're driving over curbs, feeling the ABS, maybe some traction loss, divots in the road, stuff like that to simulate some sort of feedback from the chassis to your body. I believe truly for the first time in a very long time, besides actual base shakers, which I have on the rig as well, Sim Racing Studio actually has something pretty unique. It isn't your standard vibrating motor. This is an actual haptic puck inside of this little, I think this is more of like nylon type material. And they built them within this this material here. Now, this isn't the easiest to video, of course, but essentially what this does is it actually sits down in your seat like this, right? You have a strap on the back, right? And this just straps to your seat. You have a couple of cords, and we'll go over that everything comes with. So you got a cord rather long, I would say about 6 to 8 feet. Let me grab that real quick. This goes into a control box. This actually goes into a control box. You got the 8-pin, and then you got a 4-pin right there. And the control box looks something like this. So they have their own really awesome looking metal control box, and this is also a push button to turn it off and on as well. This is an LED light that enables it to turn on and off. So once that's plugged in, that is illuminated. On the back here, you have some those same inputs, so where you can plug in the haptic seat right there, the 8-pin, and then the 4-pin right there. Then you have some other additional inputs as well. So you have a USB-C that goes directly into the PC itself. Have the actual, sorry, my fans are a little messed up. You got the power. You have a pre-sub auxiliary. I didn't look too far into that. I would assume that you could hook up like additional subwoofer or some sort of bass shaker along the lines of that. So this is basically an amplifier that controls the entire experience. So let's kind of talk about the seat itself compared to the HF8, because you guys saw a couple weeks ago, I did a closer look at the HF8, and I thought that was really amazing, especially for the price. For 178 bucks, you can't beat that, man. It's really hard to find a plug-and-play solution for such a cheap option. And I will say the HF8 is a little bit less than half the price, half the cost of the Sim Racing Studio. So if you're wanting to get entry-level haptics, next level racing, it's the way to go. I absolutely do agree with getting into haptics. It's a plug and play. It's easy to do, but less about that, more about the Sim Racing Studio and what they have to offer, the good, the bad, and maybe not so great either. So one thing I really like about the Sim Racing Studio compared to the HF8 is that it is very slim in profile. And what that means is if I put this on my rig, well, on my seating, I'm not losing any type of height. You have a puck inside of here, right? You have the pucks that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And these little pucks are about maybe 3/4 of an inch. And I lose no height. I'm not gaining any type of height or cushion like I would with the HF8. And that was one of my biggest concerns is I don't want to adjust my seat or adjust my rig because I have this thing dialed in, and the last thing I really want to do is adjust based on a haptic seat for whatever reason. That's the last thing that I wanted to do. And I had to do that, unfortunately, with the HF8, and it was a sore. It was not the best experience. We'll just put it that way. Now, in regards to the HF8 and the Sim Racing Studio, you have two completely different systems of amplification, right? So the numbers are completely different. The way the actual pucks are built within this system, they're not your typical game controller vibrating motors. These are actual, I don't know if you guys have seen it, and I'll put a little overlay over here, like actual Dayton Audio pucks. You can see that right there, and that is a completely different motor and system than you would feel with your standard haptic seat that just vibrates like this, like a game controller, right? And I explained that pretty well in the last video, that it is a completely different experience when it comes to bass shakers, that of which I have one under my rig, one on the shifter column, one under the pedals, and HF8. I thought it was a cool combination of the two. You could have and feel certain feedback, but this you can actually tune to a very low frequency and a very high frequency, giving you much more, and this is the kicker, more dynamic range with what you want to feel and relevancy to the track and the car and how it communicates to your body. One negative that I noticed, and you'll see this, I keep touching these little Velcro things right here. I had to use double-sided Velcro ordered on Amazon. And this is essential if you really want to do this right, because I promise you one thing. If you have your seat angled like I do, you're going to want to get these double-sided Velcro. This is adhesive on the backs, and stick these onto the bottom if you have a fabric rig like myself, because I have this positioned and angled backwards at an angle where the ergonomics that I have it set up it's perfect. I love this seat, man. I love this seat, the way it's positioned. I really truly believe that this was actually designed for more of an upright seat. Mine's angled back a bit. So the problem every time I got in and out of the rig, these would want to slide back and move. Now, there's only so much that you can do with a single strap, right? So that was a negative. You know, it would move around quite a bit. So getting a couple of these, that's the move right there. That will enable you to really make sure that this thing stays intact and in one place. So that's pretty much the good, the bad, the ugly. I guess we can talk about the overall experience that I had while driving with these. Now, in comparison to the Next Level Racing HF8 and the Sim Racing Studio, the HF8, yes, it still got warm. So I had to pick my uncomfortability. There was a couple of things about the HF8 that I noticed that were not so great right off the bat. So obviously you lost height. Well, you gained height. You gained a couple of inches, like 2 inches of height and 2 inches off your back because of how thick that material was. Not the end of the world, of course, because it's still a great haptic system. If you're trying to get into sim racing, I think it's a great communicator. But at the end of the day, it still ran pretty hot, and it was pretty uncomfortable. Now this one feels 10 times, I would say, 10 times more comfortable. It doesn't take up a whole lot. And as you can see, there's literally nothing there, hardly anything. One negative that I noticed after about 20 to 30 minutes of racing after an endurance race, or if I'm shooting content for 45 minutes or more, that these pucks, especially here on my legs, they get pretty warm. I'm not saying that this is a deal breaker for me. If you do wear pants, it's not so obvious, I guess you could say, but I will say that they do get a little bit warm. That's just the only thing that I've personally noticed about the seats, that it's a haptic motor. This is something that gets warm. Is it a deal breaker for me? Absolutely not. I think this is amazing. And one thing that you could do to counteract some of that heat is just dialing back the actual settings a little bit, because these things are, and that's one thing to note as well, these things are powerful as heck. Extremely powerful little motors. These haptic motors, I had them all the way down to, I think, like 28 to 30 hertz, and they were still rumbling like there was no tomorrow. And then I had the dynamics range boosted all the way up to like 60 to 70 hertz, and in between all of those the RPMs and everything like that, felt amazing. But one thing to note is that they get pretty hot. So to counteract that for long periods of time, just dial them back a little bit. You don't need to run them at full blast. This is an extremely powerful little brain for your computer here. Another thing to note here, everything was set up via SimHub. I can drop in the description below how to set up everything via SimHub. One thing to also note here, they do have their own licensing for this product. So if you're using this for commercial use, or if you're inside of a facility where you're offering this to the public, highly recommend you obviously get this for commercial use. They have licensing for all of this. This is all legitimate stuff. I would also encourage you to check out the rest of their site. They also sent me I can't find it right now. I think it's out in the hallway. They also sent me a wind sim. They sent me 2 air ducts, hook up to a brain that looks very similar to this. So you focus. And basically what that does is it simulates wind. Now, my question, Why in the world, with a closed cockpit, would you want to simulate wind? Well, I think the answer is pretty simple. I think that I can utilize this for both methods. For open wheel, just to see what that wind simulation feels like, and then for the actual functionality of a fan, as a stagnant fan. I already have one inside of there, which I'm probably going to take out. I can essentially just use this for a stagnant on-off switch for fan and change the variable speed of which. Let's get back to the actual Sim Racing Studio haptics. I think that I pretty much covered everything. Truthfully, I would say the price point, we'll talk a little bit about the price. It is $399. And if you want the licensing, that brings it up to around $350. I will say it is a bit of an investment, but it is a completely different experience from what you guys are used to with the cheaper version, half the cost HF8. The dynamic range of this is 10 times more. You have the ability to go all the way down to like 28 hertz, all the way up to 70 hertz with absolutely no issues. And just for full disclosure, I was actually running this for about 3 weeks to really see how this thing held up. I wanted to see, I didn't want to drop a review or, a closer look at this immediately, because the last thing I wanted to do is grab it. Hey, look, this is amazing. It doesn't really give this thing a chance to go through a durability test. And I will say that I ran this on 80% to 100% the entire time. I tried it with multiple sims. I tried it on Ace Evo, Assetto Corsa Competizione. I tried it on iRacing. I tried it on AMS2. And I will say, it is truthfully a game changer. If you don't want to go out and piece together the BST1s with separate amplifiers, buy your own gauge, configure your own amplifiers via SimHub, this is a plug-and-play solution. Plug directly into this, plug into the PC, and go. Essentially, it is that easy to get going. It's that easy. So I will say, is it worth it? If you have the means of wanting to experience haptics to its fullest, instead of breaking the bank and maybe getting a 4-corner haptic setup, which I think is amazing, but that's also pretty expensive, I would say as a plug-and-play solution, this is definitely worth it. I don't have really a whole lot of negative things to say about it. Obviously, I said the little pucks of this, they do get a little warm. But I will say, ultimately, at the end of the day, with as low profile as this is, my biggest complaint with the HF8 was that it was just too much cushion. There was just too much there, and it would push me forward, and I raised up 2 inches, and it just threw off everything for me. This is very low in profile, and it fits on the rig perfect. And then if you want to add the Velcro, this is exactly what I would do to counteract some of the movement that you get inside the rig as well. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this closer look of the Sim Racing Studio U-Shake6. Again, Astrological's Racing. I will see you guys on the track.